Hey, Rob Bertman here, founder of Family Budget Expert, and today we're going to talk about a subject that you think would actually help you create and stick to a budget, but for a lot of families, a lot of busy families like you, can have the exact opposite effect, where you can't stick to budgeting, the wheels fall off, and it blows up. So today we're going to talk about why too many budget categories is a problem, and what you can do instead that will actually make your budget stick. So let's talk about why too many budget categories are a problem. Right? So imagine you're sitting down, you're creating your budget, and you've got your dining out budget, you've got your clothing budget, you've got your travel budget, you've got your kids budget, you've got your mortgage budget. The problem is, the more information that we look at, the harder it actually is to identify the things that we can actually change and move the needle. For example, your mortgage or your rent, has it ever come in above or below the number that you budgeted for? Of course not. It always hits the target. Now, what about that dining out spending or that Amazon spending or the clothing shopping or the hobbies? Chances are that is usually the one that fluctuates the most, and it's also one that you have the most control over. So the key here is, rather than creating a budget category and trying to hit numbers in 20 different, you're trying to aim at 20 different targets, right? Let's aim at one target. The most important target to aim at is the total outflow. How much money is actually going to be leaving your bank account by the end of the month versus how much is coming in. That is the number one factor to have more money left over so that you can save, invest, pay back the credit card debt, pay back your student loans, and have that extra money left over. So when we're trying to hit 20 different targets, we lose sight of the ones that we actually have control over. So that's one. So that's one reason why too many budget categories doesn't work. Now, another reason is this. So imagine you're going in, you finally got up the motivation, you're going to take a look at your spending using a budgeting app like Mint or EveryDollar or Tiller or Truebill or whatever the case may be, right? You're in there and you're looking, and all of a sudden you see all these things that are miscategorized. And you're thinking, oh, and that Amazon purchase, was that clothing? Was that groceries? Was that household goods? What was it? How do I categorize that? And so just on that one transaction alone, you are spending a ton of time trying to figure it out. So then you say, well, maybe I'll just log onto my Amazon account and figure out what it actually was. What was this? So you log in your Amazon account, and then all of a sudden, some distraction hits you, right? And you're done, you leave it. And at the end of the day, you didn't categorize anything. So a lot of times with too many budget categories too, and having to make everything fit in a box, it creates more work. It makes sitting down longer if you even have the time as a busy family to even take a look at all the transactions that you have. So that's reason number two why too many budget categories gets in the way. Number one is it makes it hard to see the actual things that you can change. And number two is that when you go into categorize, it just becomes overwhelming. It's too much. Okay, so reason three that too many budget categories gets in the way is because people end up just kind of, pulling a number out of the air and saying, okay, well, I think we're spending $1,000 a month on food, and so let's just make our budget $1,000. But what happens is when you actually go to review your spending, and this happens all the time to everybody, myself included, clients, other people I've talked to, is that the number that you think you're spending on those discretionary items actually ends up being, the real number actually ends up being a lot higher. So when you pull a number out of the air, if you want to get to $800 of food spending as a family of 4 or 5, and you're spending $1,000 or $1,200, that's probably doable without changing up your whole routine. But if you are unaware that you're actually spending $1,500 or maybe even $2,000 a month on food, and you try to get to $800, now you're talking about changing blowing up your entire grocery routine. You're talking about shopping at different stores, making different choices, never going out to eat, right? No DoorDash, no Uber Eats, none of that. We're talking just slash and like cut everything out, as much as we can. So that's the other problem with the budget categories, is that unless we actually know what we're used to spending, we can't create a budget for that category. So we have 3 reasons why too many budget categories just don't work. One is that it's hard to aim at 20 different targets. 2 is that when you go to categorize it all, you've got to figure out where all these things fit in, and that's a problem. And three is that we actually don't know, unless we actually know how much we're spending in certain areas, it's really hard to create a budget that we can realistically stick to as a family. So what should you do instead? Okay, so here's what you should do instead. Again, what matters most is how much money comes in and how much money goes out. Okay, so if we just took the time, rather than reviewing our entire budget and 20 different budget categories, if we just said, what if we just reviewed our transactions to see where our money went? I see we went out for gas, got dinner, grocery shopping, there's an Amazon purchase, just kind of gaining awareness. And by looking at those transactions, you'll actually be able to see where your money's going and whether you think it's money well spent according to you, right? Now, and if you don't have to categorize everything, you don't have to spend the time looking up those Amazon transactions, understanding those checks you wrote or the Venmo and PayPal and all that stuff. It gets really, really cumbersome because you don't need to do that because you're focusing on the overall spending number. When you focus on the overall spending number, you now know how much has come in and how much has gone out. That is the number one metric to make sure that you will spend less than you make and be able to stick to a budget. So if you really want budgeting to stick, only pick 1, 2, maybe 3 tops budget categories that you really want to track and make sure that you're not overspending on and that you feel like you can do better on. A lot of families go with food and dining as one of those categories. And a lot of times families go with sort of those shopping categories like Amazon, Target, Walmart, rather than categorizing it as, well, every time we get a package, it goes in a different category. Just group it all into one category: Amazon, Target, Walmart, Dollar Tree, stores like that where you can get anything and you end up walking out with more than you anticipated. Make all that one category to track. And then just track your overall spending number for the month. And if you take a look at that weekly, it should only take you 5 minutes, honestly. 5, maybe 10 as you're starting out, reviewing your transactions, looking at 1, 2, or 3 key budget categories, and taking a look at the overall number. That is so much better than creating 20 million budget categories and trying to stick to it because you're busy, right? You're a parent. You probably have kids. You've got to work. You've got all these responsibilities. You just don't have the time to devote 30 minutes a day categorizing your transactions, right? So this should take 5 or 10 minutes a week to take a look at your transactions, those key budget categories, how much has come in and gone out. And I promise you, how do I know? Because it's worked for me, it's worked for my clients, that you will now be able to identify the problem areas, be able to stick to it without having to monitor 20 million different things. So I hope you like this. If you have any questions or you want to get in touch, go to familybudgetexpert.com/help. And you can find the ways that we can work together. I do include a free call if you want to talk through your budget challenges, and then we can see if that solves your issue or if we need to more formally engage and work to solve even greater problems. So look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching this, and we'll talk to you soon.